Gridiron Central is sponsored by Georgia Northwestern Technical College, Riverside Automotive Group.
The high school football season, the 2012 high school football season has come to an end, and this is the Gridiron Central wrap-up show. As always, I'm joined by my partner in crime, Matt Davis, the voice of high school football, basketball, and practically any other sport possible on 95.7 The Ridge. And Matt, you were at the Georgia Dome as a spectator on Saturday. Was it any better from the stands than it was from the sidelines?
I got to be honest with you, man, it really wasn't. There were some times in the Calhoun-Jefferson game where it really felt like, okay, this is the turning point. Calhoun's back in this. And the main situation where I saw that happening was there in the second half. You had a couple of situations where Calhoun had to punt, Jefferson had to do the same, and then Calhoun got an interception. Well, right after that interception, 75-yard pass play, and then next thing you know, you got a one-score game. You got to remember, Calhoun was down 21-7 at the halftime.
Yes.
So that gave them some new life, and I thought, okay, this is where things turn around. This is where they get the offense going finally, stop having the disastrous penalties that it had, and things turn around. Well, a couple minutes later, Jefferson's already scored again and getting ready to score again and really put it away. And so with about, I guess it was 9 minutes, something like that left in the game, they had a 3-score lead, and you knew at that point this game is over with. So, I've read some articles from the Jefferson perspective, and their viewpoint is we whooped their tails. And I wouldn't say it was that extreme because, like I say, in the second half, Calhoun still had some hope. The game that was a butt-whipping was the one we're going to talk about next. But at the same time, I think that it was known early on that Jefferson was going to end up being the better team in this game and win. So the answer is no. It really didn't look much better from being up in the stands than it did on the sidelines.
And obviously we're talking about Calhoun's loss to Jefferson in the Class AA state title game. 2 or 3 key points that I need to bring up about this. Number one of Calhoun's key defensive players was hurt in the state semifinal game, did not play against Jefferson, and it kind of showed on the field after the game. Coach Hal Lamb, not making excuses, but he said, look, we really missed that kid on defense. The key thing in the game, there were really 2 keys to me in that game. Actually, I'll go with 3. The first key in that, I can't tell you the number of times Calhoun put Jefferson in 3rd and long situations. At least 4 times in the first half. All 4 times, Jefferson converted the 3rd and long and would end up either eating up clock or scoring a touchdown off them. I remember a 3rd and 17 situation where there's no way in heck they should have been able to convert, and they did. A pass completed between 2 Calhoun defenders. Number 2, Jefferson's quarterback was an absolute gamer. That kid played one heck of a football game. Again, I had mentioned in last week's show that I thought that Taylor Lamb managed the game last year against Buford phenomenally. This quarterback from Jefferson one-upped him in this game. When he ran well. There were 2 or 3 times Calhoun defenders had him dead to rights in the backfield, and he threw a little shimmy shake or a deke, and all of a sudden the Calhoun guy was left over here, and he's rushing for 10 more yards and a first down or completing a 30-yard touchdown pass. I mean, that kid was spot on in the game. And the third thing about it was when Calhoun rallied, and they did rally, the interception, the big pass play, cuts it to 21-14, then Jefferson commits the turnover. Calhoun has a ball, down 7, late in the 3rd quarter. Every bit of momentum is on their sidelines. The stands, you're feeling it. I'm going, okay, now's the time. The next play after the turnover, they throw the interception. 3 plays later, Jefferson scores to make it a 2-touchdown game again. Calhoun never came close again. In all honesty, at that point, you looked at Calhoun's sidelines, and they had the glazed look in their eyes that we saw when they played Buford the previous 4 years, when Buford would make the big runs and put them away. That's exactly how Calhoun looked. Look, take nothing away from Calhoun. Phenomenal season, very good football team, but we saw the last 2 games of the season against Lamar County and then against Jefferson in the state finals. Number 1, those coaches found a way to slow down Calhoun's offense. And number 2, they found a way to score against Calhoun's defense. 2 very key things. Calhoun doesn't lose tons off this team. The key loss off this team, in my mind, quarterback Taylor Lamb. It'll be very hard to replace him. We're going to talk about the future later in the show. Right now, we're going to talk about the other game, the Class 4A state title game, which was Sandy Creek versus Ridgeland. Matt, you've already talked a little bit about it. What was your takeaways from that game?
Well, I think that it kind of turned out how most people thought it would.
Yeah.
Sandy Creek, they're loaded with D1 talent.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, the only prayer that Ridgeland was going to have in this game, was to get out there and control the game and grind out the clock. Well, Sandy Creek came out and punched them in the mouth right away. And it was clear that Ridgeland just did not have the athletes to keep up with them on the field. And in my mind, I've seen a lot of football teams play this year. Sandy Creek, hands down, the best football team I've seen, the most complete. And, they were unbelievable. And so, like I say, unlike the Calhoun game where you felt like there was hope throughout until the very end when, you had the field goal and there were 3 scores up with about 8 or 9 minutes to go, Ridgeland, it was clear from the first quarter of the game that this was done. They were done. There was no way that they were going to be able to win this game by just constantly running the ball. They had absolutely no passing game. And so, what Ridgeland was trying to do was absolutely no mystery to Sandy Creek's defense, and they had a very solid defense. So, it was a great season for Ridgeland. They made it to the state championship for the first time, had the best record they ever had. There's so many plus sides to what Ridgeland was able to do this year. And so, in my mind, there's no reason for them to hang their heads. But let's face it, they were just outmatched in this game.
Yeah. Well, without a doubt. And, of course, it's tough to say that, but I think Sandy Creek would have been very competitive, if not the winners in 5A and 6A as well. I think in all classifications, Sandy Creek would have hung with just about anybody. Coming into the game, and I mentioned last week that Ridgeland was going to have to play their best game of the season and the perfect football game, and they didn't do either one of those things. And, of course, that's not a knock on Ridgeland. Sandy Creek is a very, very good football team. The one time, I think they were down 14-0, and Ridgeland put a drive together. Included in that drive, Darrell Bridges rolled out and did the halfback pass. Ridgeland got down to about the 20-yard line. You're thinking, okay, here it comes. Sandy Creek's defense just, shuts them down again. Bridges tried to roll out and do another halfback pass. I believe it was a little bit later in the first half. And when he rolled out, Sandy Creek defenders were right there and just put him to the turf. By that time, Sandy Creek wasn't putting 9 guys in the box. They were putting the entire football team in the box. There was no doubt. Basically, they were just blitzing off the sides, a guy up the middle, knowing that Ridgeland was going to run the ball every single time. When that mystery is taken away, a team like Sandy Creek is going to own you. And, and it's not a knock against Ridgeland. Ridgeland's a very good football team, second best team in all of Quad A. Phenomenal season, best season they've ever had. But Sandy Creek was the best team in Quad A coming into the game. We knew it, and they showed us why. Again, a great season for Ridgeland, another very good season for Calhoun. Yeah, and the Ridgeland fans, it was kind of a stark difference for me between the Calhoun fans and the Ridgeland fans after the game. The Calhoun fans were very, very upset. A lot of tears, they felt like they should have won the game. The Ridgeland fans, as Kevin Myrick and I were walking back to our car, they were cheering and yelling and all happy that they had just made it to the Dome. So, and that's a great way to look at it, too. You're the second best team in the state of Georgia in Class 4A, and that's to be celebrated. The same thing for Calhoun. Yeah, you know what? You didn't win the state title, but you're second best. Of course, it's awfully tough when you're 1-4 in state title games over the last 5 years. That being said, 2012 has come to an end. Right after the commercial break, Matt and I are going to look back at 2 or 3 of the big moments that we each enjoyed from this 2012 football season.
Begin your future at Georgia Northwestern Technical College. We offer degrees, diplomas, and certificates in over 200 programs of study. Choose a career in business, health, industrial, or public service. With the flexibility of day, evening, and online classes at any of our 5 campus locations, getting your education at GNTC has never been more convenient. There are many financial aid options available, including student loans. Apply now. Georgia Northwestern Technical College. Your college, your town, your future.
Welcome back to the show. We always like to thank our sponsors, Georgia Northwestern Technical College and Riverside Automotive Group, for helping us bring you the show now in its 6th season. 2012 had a lot of very interesting moments, crazy plays, great games, not so great games. Matt, I know I have 2 or 3 moments I'm going to think about from this season. What are 2 or 3 moments you take away from this year?
Well, for me, more so than moments, it's just kind of about different situations with different teams. And for me, the Model Blue Devils have to come into the conversation. Yes. You know, they have a winning record for the first time since 1999. They made it to the playoffs for the first time since 2003. They had a huge season, and so for me it was fun to go to some of those games, broadcast some of those games, and see the reaction that you got from the community, because as the season went on, the crowds got bigger and bigger and bigger, and the fans got louder and louder and louder because they got a taste of success. And so we'll talk more about that a little bit later on when we talk of things we're looking forward to for next year. But for me, that was some big moments where watching those kids have success on the football field because it had been such a long time. Ridgeland, their magical season. I only got to see them in the one game. That was in the state finals, which was not one of their finest moments. But you're looking at a team that plays in the Dome for the first time in the state finals. So the moment they took the field, there's a moment for you, because they're doing this for the first time, and that's always special to see. And, of course, they had the best season ever in school history. They had a lot of milestones, so I wanted to mention them in the conversation. And then, of course, a lot of people are going to be making comments, oh, Calhoun, they've made it to the state championship game 5 times. They only come away with 1 win. They're like the Atlanta Braves. They get all these titles, but they can't get it done in the big show, and those kinds of things. I get tired of hearing stuff like that, quite frankly, because let's face it, Calhoun wins 12 consecutive region titles. Yeah. Oh, my God. Remain undefeated in region play since 2001. The last time they lost a region game was to Darlington that year, 14-7, and then they make it to the state championship for the 5th year in a row. That is huge. That's a big moment right there. Whether they win or lose the game, that is a major accomplishment. So those are the few things that really stick out in my mind of things to remember from this particular year in football.
Definitely so. A few more to add from me. I think Tryon's season. Tryon still was kind of under the radar even into the playoffs. Got to the second round of the playoffs, lost to ECI, the eventual Class A public school state champion. Actually gave them a game. It was 21-10 when everything was said and done. Tryon really turned. The Bulldogs had a great season. I'll be very curious to see how they do in the offseason and what we get from them in 2013, because there's got to be a lot of positives there on the sidelines there. I mean, I'm going to agree with Matt. Model, in the last 30 years, Model has only had 2 winning seasons in football. This was the second one. Playoffs for the first time since '99. Yes, they lost in the playoffs, but you know what? They got a taste of the playoffs. Other teams for that obviously Calhoun's run, you got to mention Calhoun. Pretty much every year we're at the same year saying, hey, it's Calhoun. They keep on keeping on. You're right. They didn't win the state title, but unlike every other local team other than Ridgeland, they've actually been to the Dome. You can criticize and you can hate all you want to, but until you can beat them or start showing up at the Dome on a regular basis, you might want to keep your mouth shut. It's blunt as it can be.
Coosa, a little nicer than Jim.
Oh, not me. I'm always mean. Coosa making the state playoffs, a very young team making the state playoffs. Unity Christian, after a very tough off season from the previous year, making the playoffs. I thought that was great. Although Cedartown did not make the playoffs, the story of Nick Chubb and the just monster yardage games the junior from Cedartown continued to have. He's going to be a great story to watch, something we'll probably mention in the future segment. Adairsville, a very young team, doing quite well. And, of course, obviously Ridgeland, Mark Mariakis and the bunch up there, they did a phenomenal job. All in all, I thought it was a pretty good season.
I did want to mention this, too.
Certainly.
Another moment for me that was really good, despite the fact that Ridgeland had such a tough time in that state championship game, one of the things that I was very, very, very excited to see was Mark Mariakis and his reaction to his team, because he kept hugging his guys, and you could tell that he was just trying to reassure them and give them his vote of confidence, because they worked so hard for him all year long. And I got to tell you, man, that was one of the classiest things that I've seen all year. So I did want to make sure to mention that, because I thought that was great.
Without a doubt. And that was, in the Ridgeland Panthers, a phenomenal story. I mean, definitely, in that area, I believe one of the biggest stories in 2012 where the sports or news related at all. And of course, the season comes to an end. Of course, it's just ended, so what are we going to do? After the commercial break, we're going to break out a crystal ball, although it'll be invisible to y'all. We'll be able to see it, and we'll start making some projections about which teams to watch and things to look for in the 2013 high school football season. Stick around.
Begin your future at Georgia Northwestern Technical College. We offer degrees, diplomas, and certificates in over 200 programs of study. Choose a career in business, health, industrial, or public service. With the flexibility of day, evening, and online classes at any of our 5 campus locations, getting your education at GNTC has never been more convenient. There are many financial aid options available, including student loans. Apply now. Georgia Northwestern Technical College. Your college, your town, your future.
Welcome back to the show, and of course, I'll thank our sponsors one last time, Georgia Northwestern Technical College and Riverside Automotive Group, for helping bring us the show in our 6th season. We've talked all about 2012. You've been with us all season long, so it's time to break out the invisible crystal ball and talk about 2013 and what we may see. Matt, what are your thoughts, projections for the 2013 high school football season?
Well, I don't know that I necessarily have any projections, but in terms of thoughts about this, one of the things that's been a recurring theme here on the program this year throughout, ever since we got past the first few weeks of the season, it became very clear early on that we had a lot of teams in 7AA that had suffered great attrition and had very, very young teams. Now, some of these teams, I felt like had a lot of talent. It was just talent that had not been developed yet because of inexperience. Now that they've got some experience under their belt and they've kind of been through the trenches a little bit, what happens next year to some of these teams? Do they improve? How much do they improve? Which teams will rise to the top? Those sorts of things. That's something that you always look forward to from year to year. And I actually I've ran into a couple of the coaches from 7AA at the basketball tournament this week, and one of them that I ran into was from Almerchi, Preston Cash, and I asked him, I said, "Hey, Coach, are you ready for the football season to start again?" And, we're just a few weeks from the end of it. And he was like, "Absolutely." And there was a certain amount of excitement coming from him because I think he feels that way too. He's like, I'm ready to see how much progress we've made and get out there. And so for me, that's cool to see that they're always ready to get back out there and keep on going. And so that'll be one of the things I look forward to the most is to see how 7AA improves and what these teams do next year. On the other hand, kind of on the same subject, watching teams like Model, Ridgeland, other area teams that had some newfound success, so to speak. Of course, Ridgeland had some success in recent years, but they had their most success to date this year. And then Model, of course, as we mentioned to you several times throughout the program today, it'd been a long time since they've experienced a winning season and made it to the playoffs. So what happens next year? I'm curious to find out if they're able to build on this and kind of continue to ride that wave of success and watch it grow. And so that's one of the things I really can't wait to see next year. And then, of course, Calhoun fans are not going to like to hear me say this, but I'm also excited to see which one of these teams from 7AA finally beats the Calhoun Yellow Jackets. I mean, let's face it, I live in Rome, and so, much like a lot of people around here, it's going to be a very exciting and interesting day, and I'm not necessarily saying I want Calhoun to lose, but it will definitely add a little bit of parity if we can finally find some teams here in the area that can compete with them. And so will that be this year? I don't know. We'll have to see what happens, but I know that's something that some of the teams around the area, that their goal is to get out there and finally find a way to beat Calhoun.
Well, it better be the goal.
Absolutely.
You win 12 straight region titles, certainly somebody's going to be gunning for you. And in my mind, I start with single A. I think Trine is going to be a team to watch for next year. I really think the Bulldogs had a great season. I like what they're doing. I like the new coaching staff and everything. I'll be very curious to see how they do, but it would not surprise me at all if Trine doesn't make a run next year. Darlington, always a question, who's going to replace Brad Butler at quarterback and single it down there. They lose some seniors, so Darlington's going to be retooling. In Double A, I really like Coosa. Coosa was that team. A lot of sophomores on that team. Didn't have a great record. They did what they needed to do to get into the playoffs. If they can keep that team together, keep them healthy, I think they could really challenge. Pepper lost 20-plus seniors on a team that kind of underachieved, so they weren't world beaters. Model, they're going to lose a couple of seniors. Almerchi was a very young squad. I'll be curious to see if they're able to take a step up. And like Matt said, can any of these teams from 7AA actually challenge Calhoun? Spoiler alert, no, they can't. Not next year either. Sorry, it's just not going to happen. It's been for 12 years. That being said, what we saw from Calhoun in the playoffs this year, of course, Calhoun fans love it when I pick against them. Number one, Calhoun's regular season winning streak comes to an end when they play Carrollton, third game of the season next year. Write it down. I said it first. That's when it comes to an end. Calhoun's still going to be good. I figure they'll be 9-1 in the regular season. But watch out for the Lamar counties, the Brooks counties, and the Jeffersons, because what they have done is they have shown Calhoun is susceptible to teams not named Buford. And that's the first time we've seen that in 4 or 5 years. So they found some game plans to hamper Calhoun and see if Calhoun coaches can come back and change that, moving up to AAA. Cartersville brings back the farm. Granted, they're probably still going to have to get through Buford to get to the Dome, but watch out. That's going to be a great team. Another team in AAA locally I really like the looks of at Daresville. They were awfully young this year. Got to find the defense. I'm going to repeat this. Got to find a defense. But if the offense stays healthy, everybody comes out there, Daresville is going to be a very good team. Could be an 8-2, 9-1 program who could make a run a couple of rounds into the playoffs, possibly. Moving up into Quad A, the biggest question for me, actually two big questions. How's Ridgeland going to react to losing so much of this team? Bridges, the running back, Bell, the all-everything DB, wide receiver, a lot of the offensive, defensive lines are going to be gone. You know, Cam Mariakis and his crew get everybody back on the same page of winning. And I think the biggest question, and of course this one's all coming out of Polk County, is what are we going to see from Cedartown next year? This year you had possibly the best running back in the state of Georgia, Nick Chubb, but the defense wasn't quite there. The offense of the Nick Chubb wasn't quite there. What is Cedartown going to do in the offseason, and what are we going to see from a team that a lot of people thought was going to be a playoff team this year that wasn't able to make it? And moving up into 5A, really the only local school we have, Rome High School, 8-2 season, actually 8-3 season. They lost to Gainesville, the eventual state champions in the first round of the 5A playoffs. Can Rome take the next step and beat an Allatoona, an East Paulding, or a Gainesville? If the Wolves can, we might be able to revert back to 08 and that great Rome team that made it all the way to the Class 4A state semis. Who knows? You know, they're going to have a senior quarterback, better DBs, you know, the defense. If they can open up a passing game, Rome might be able to do that. And, of course, I've already mentioned his name. I'll be very curious to see how many rushing yards can Nick Chubb get. You know, if he had played a full season, a couple games into the playoffs, I mean, the sky would have been the limit. Can he actually chase the single-season state rushing record? He was awfully close this year. And one last team, of course, we don't want to forget about Unity Christian. Can the Lions, who made it to the playoffs again this season, go a step further? A lot of talent returning on that team for Joe Curtis. Maybe the Lions can make a run, too. I will say this right now. I've already predicted when Calhoun will lose, that I will be very surprised if we're in the Dome next year. I'll leave it on that note, not quite as optimistic as you would hope. And, of course, the good thing is I'm oftentimes wrong. Matt, it's been a great year.
Yeah, it's been a ton of fun, and I'll be honest with you, I love basketball season and the other seasons in sports in the area, but I'm always looking forward to the next football season. And the thing is, it'll roll around before you know it. We'll be back in here, you know, very quickly.
Most definitely. For Kevin Myrick, Austin Wiggins, Matt Davis, I'm Jim Allred saying we'll see you next year.
Gridiron Central is sponsored by Georgia Northwestern Technical College, Riverside Automotive Group,